The one thing I always hear from people that are on Social Security is they can't believe they're being taxed again.
And welcome into Protect and Grow Chicagoland Retirement with Chicagoland's certified financial planning professional, Tim Stearns, CFP. Here, ladies and gentlemen, helping to inform and educate proactive savers and investors what you need to know, what you need to be considering or doing with your money in order to achieve those important life and financial goals. And Tim, nothing ever stays the same in the world of money or finance or politics. And here's where the two combined is that we recently saw, after months of negotiations, the passage of the OBBB, the One Big Beautiful Bill. And it means, yet again, there's an awful lot of change that we're going to have to pay attention to and incorporate into our planning. So, with that background, Tim, how have you been?
Good, I've been good. You know what I'm seeing here with this bill is everyone's excited that the tax brackets are going to be permanent. But if you think about it, nothing's permanent, especially when it comes to Congress. They changed the rules in the middle of the game quite a bit. So I'm talking to our clients about opportunities for Roth conversions because if you remember, the old tax bill was supposed to end at the end of this year. So now at least through the next couple of years, we'll have it around where these lower tax brackets that a lot of clients that are actually retired can kind of play in that 12% tax bracket and do some Roth conversions and at least nibble on the tax bill.
Yeah, there's an old saying, right? In order to do that, it would take an act of Congress. Well, Congress does act
Got
from
it.
time to time, and these are
Yes,
only
sir.
permanent until Congress acts to change them. So big air quotes around the permanent part of this. It's just that, Tim, a lot of these kind of laws, for instance, like the original 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which established our current tax rates and brackets and the amount of dollars that go into each one of those. That was only a temporary bill. It was set to expire, and this one now puts these rates and brackets and amounts in place permanently until they're changed again.
Right. Right. And that's why I would tell people out there, if your advisor or if you're not taking advantage of it, make sure you're giving a call to us. We'll be happy to talk about that and kind of the one big thing that I think is to actually run that tax bill that we offer, which is at www.mvpcfp.com to see what kind of a tax bill you have going into retirement or if you're in there even right now, and then look at what Roth conversions would do. Anything that can move that needle is definitely worth talking about.
Right. Yeah. And a different kind of bill there, just to differentiate the one big beautiful bill. That's the bill that passed and now became law, but you're talking about how much we're going to have to pay, the
Correct.
retirement tax bill calculator, how much you're going to owe out of your retirement nest egg. And you still need to look at being proactive and managing that and bringing that down as much as possible, controlling that where you can. And that website, again, for you to see your numbers for yourself online with that retirement tax bill calculator, mvpcfp.com, mvpcfp.com. And if you would like to get your own protect and grow plan together, a big part of that is protecting from unnecessary or higher taxes into the future. Tim Stearns, the team from TJ Stearns Inc., they put together that protect and grow written retirement blueprint, looking at income, investments, taxes, as we will talk a lot about today, healthcare and legacy, and making sure you've got a plan to address all of those areas. If you'd like to take advantage of that, just call 800-640-2256. That is 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256. So I think sort of already answered this a little bit, Tim, but let's extrapolate on this.
Sure.
Why does this bill not negate our need to look at Roth conversions and do proactive planning? Why is it that we should still be, as you have been over the course of years on this program, trying to emphasize the importance and executing on the strategies to get dollars over into those Roth accounts or those tax-free options?
Well, we've talked about this many times, is that if you walked up to someone on the street and you asked them how much their IRAs were worth, they could probably tell you within a couple $1,000s, especially with all the volatility we've had. But on the other hand, if you walked up to them and asked them what their taxes will be in retirement, they would not have a clue. But as a follow-up question, if I ask them, do you want to pay more in taxes or less? I think we all know that answer. So that's why we came up with that, website to show people this is what you can save. This is why you should do it. And, with this new, quote unquote permanent tax bill, you have another set of opportunities. Don't pass them up. By defaulting to the IRS's, taxes, you're going to be paying more than you should.
Again, with the passage of this one big, beautiful bill, the current Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 rates and brackets are now permanent. They were originally set to expire at the end of this year, and we had been talking about doing those Roth conversions, getting that in place because we didn't know what the rates would be after this year. Well, now we know, but
Yep.
it doesn't negate paying those taxes while rates are lower, making those Roth conversions and making those contributions where possible. I mean, Tim, ultimately, this is going to allow people either during their lifetimes or even thereafter as part of their legacy pay less in tax.
Right. And if you aren't worried about yourself having to pay more taxes, you say, well, the heck with it, I'll leave it to the kids and they can do that. Well, most cases, hopefully your kids are having a decent living. They're going to pay the taxes and they're giving more of your money to the government. So it behooves anyone that is going to be proactive to do this, and we talk about how on April 15th, most people are kind of reactionary, right?
Mm.
They do the shoulda, coulda, woulda. Well, this is something you don't have to do that. You can get ahead of it right now and start mitigating taxes.
Tim, we've got a 36, close to $37 trillion national debt growing quickly. I saw some reports that it grew by nearly $500 billion within the last just couple months. I've seen reports that say that the total cost of this new one big beautiful bill is anticipated to be another 4 to 5 trillion over the next 10 years. But I mean, ultimately, I've been around, alive, and on this earth for a while, and I think there have only been 1 or 2 years where we have not run a deficit and added to that national debt. The spending is not slowing down, and at some
Right.
point in time, we've got elections every 2 years in this country. We've got a presidential election every 4 years, changing regimes quite often. So at some point in time, there is going to be a different conversation, a different attitude, different discussions about the laws and how we address and tackle the spending and, on the other side of the coin, the collection of money that we have in this country. And I think taxes, regardless of how, again, air quotes here, permanent these rates are, at some point in time down the road, they're going to have to change again.
Well, as we've talked about, how do you get out of a deficit? You cut spending or you increase taxes. And we've seen what Congress does. They're
Yeah,
always
forgive
increasing
me
taxes.
not believing they're going to cut spending.
Exactly. So, and I've asked that question in every tax seminar I've given and every retirement class. And I've never had anybody, regardless of affiliation or whichever uh, political party, say, oh, I think it's going to go down. That's just not a thing.
Yeah,
People are
that
actually realistic about that.
those donkeys and elephants, they disagree on a lot, but not spending money.
Right.
Right?
That's
Yeah.
that's fair.
Yeah. Tim, there is an additional provision within this one big, beautiful bill that seniors are no longer going to have to pay tax on their Social Security. However, this is a statement that has some nuances that are actually quite different than the reality of how this works. In fact, it's not that Social Security is not going to be taxed. That would take a different type of passage. This was passed through reconciliation. They
Right.
were not able to change the fact that Social Security will be taxable, but what they were able to do was give seniors 64 and above an additional tax credit, $6,000
Right.
additional deduction, which I guess in theory offsets the tax that most people
Right.
pay on their Social Security, is
Sure.
the idea.
Well, I would think anyone who has that, I mean, let's not look a gift horse in the mouth. I know my mom, if she could save $6,000, on her taxes, would be really happy.
I bet if she could hear you right now, she would agree.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But this additional 6,000, here's the caveat is that that part is not so permanent. That
Yes.
$6,000 additional deduction for qualifying seniors has become kind of known as the senior bonus here.
Right.
That phases out at a certain amount of income. It starts when an income exceeds 75,000, and then that provision goes away completely. It
Right.
expires in the year 2028.
Right. And that's unfortunate that they're doing that because I think, the one thing I always hear from people that are on Social Security is they can't believe they're being taxed again.
Right.
And that's fair to say. And the stuff we were hearing about was that they were going to maybe double the amount and all this type of thing. Instead, they throw this $6,000 at you. But if you're making more than $75,000, it's faded out. And then the last one is that it's going to go away no matter what in 2028. I marvel sometimes at what's going on in Washington, D.C. I don't think they're really connected.
Well, doesn't that almost force the issue and force their hand that they're going to have to revisit these conversations sooner
All
rather
the
than
time.
later?
Yeah.
The same way with the original 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expiring at the end of this year. Like, I think there's a little bit of a lack of foresight, surprisingly, in Washington, where the one party thought that they would be in power, and so they wouldn't have to have addressed this. They could have just let that expire, but things didn't go as planned. And so
Right.
now the other party got to extend it. But again, the same way here. If a provision is going to expire, Tim, doesn't that force the conversation to be had that the rest of this is going to be reevaluated in just a few short years?
Yes, and that tells me that you should get your running shoes on for doing Roth conversions because we know what they are right now, and we have basically 3.5 years to work with this. So make it count. I know those are conversations we'll be having just to make sure that people understand that there is an opportunity. If they want to seize it, great, but they were told about it. Most people that come in here from our radio show, from my classes, their advisors are strictly money managers. They're not telling them about how to save on taxes. They know stocks and bonds and mutual funds, and that's about it. And in fact, I know certain companies that won't touch the tax questions with a 10-foot pole. We have a CPA on staff, so we're able to do whatever, we need to get answers, even estate planning, because we have an estate planning attorney on staff as well to get it done.
Well, a few other major provisions of this and things that will impact and affect taxpayers. The standard deduction increases $15,750 for single filers, $31,500 for joint filers in 2025. That additional $6,000 deduction for qualifying seniors, as we already talked about.
Yep.
Alternative minimum tax is the exemption is now permanent. It also increases the phase out thresholds to $500,000 for single filers. That will be indexed for inflation. The child tax credit, an additional $200 per child. Possibly a big one for residents of Illinois and Chicagoland, Tim, is the state and local tax deduction cap has increased from 10,000 to 40,000. That's probably going to be a welcome change for some higher earners in Illinois.
Oh, right. And not only that, but I mean the 10,000, I mean, I don't know really anyone who's paying that in taxes around here. So that 10,000 was, a drop in the bucket. And now it's 40,000, so that can help a little bit, but there again, they're going to do a phase out. The more money you make, the less you're going to be able to claim that. Of
And that is scheduled to revert back to
course.
10,000 in
Yep.
2030. So
Right.
again, the I'm air quoting this every time I say it, ladies and gentlemen. The permanent nature of all of this is less than permanent.
Right. And things will be changing on a dime. And that's why we are always, we send out our email blast to our clients and prospects that we've had contact with, just so that they know what's going on and that we're on the front lines making sure we do too.
Well, again, if you've got questions, if you have not had these conversations, if you'd like to plan a little bit more proactively, the life that you envision is done through proactive planning. That's how it is accomplished, ladies and gentlemen. You need to know and understand these kind of major changes that impact your finance and should be reflected in your planning. So pick up the phone and talk with Tim Stearns, CFP, and the team from TJ Stearns Inc. They will put together, along with you, that Protect and Grow written retirement blueprint. All you got to do is call 800-640-2256. That is 800-640-2256. 800-640-2256.
And hey, Peter, I think right now is a good time to offer the book. Solving the modern retirement riddle. I think it focuses a lot on these Roth conversion opportunities that we have, and now it's very timely because we're telling all of our clients, look what you can do right now, and that's save taxes.
Well, if you would like a copy of that book, Solving the Modern Retirement Riddle, 10 copies of that available for callers to the program today. 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256. Tim, how are we going to pay for all of these tax cuts along with all of the rest of the spending that we do on a regular basis? I heard and read here in the show note prep that the middle quintile, like the average American taxpayer right now is paying about 30% lower taxes than they were even as recently as the mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s. So taxes have come down and now we've made these lower rates permanent, but we've been running these debts, deficits and running up the debt. So how do we end up paying for all of this? Because we spend more money than we bring in each year.
Well, I know if that was a household, what would happen? We'd be out of business. So I'm hoping that someone can wrangle in some of the spending, but until then, they're going to keep raising taxes, and with that comes, people not having more money in their pocket. Even with these new tax cuts staying permanent for, like we keep saying, permanent for temporary time is what I'm looking at. This is the times that we're talking to our clients to make sure that they understand, Social Security still being taxed the way it was. Yeah, you might get $6,000, but at the end of the day, it's a good time to be doing some of these Roth conversions, especially before you get to be age 73 or 75 for some of us, when you have to do your RMDs and God knows what taxes will be at down then.
Tim, does this not also potentially set up a conversation about a different way for them to collect our taxes? We know that if we make too much money, that we pay an extra fee for our Medicare. Part B
Yep.
and Part D have IRMA assessed, income related monthly adjustment amount. And the most two important letters there, income related. It is essentially means testing.
Yep.
And what we have seen is that they can control this without having to pass the same kind of comprehensive legislation addressing tax codes. And the trust funds for those programs that are now funded through collecting that IRMA fee are the only ones that seem to be solvent right now. Social Security having trouble. That's another $75 trillion in unfunded liability. Medicare Part A, Medicaid, but Medicare B and Part D, thanks in part to the IRMA assessment, are the only ones that are well funded. So do you think that we see a move to more income related assessments rather than whole scale tax law changes into the future?
Yeah, we've talked about that in our classes, and we've had people come up with that. Yeah, we're a little bit concerned about that because it doesn't take an act of Congress literally to move that around, and they can get more money from the people who are, of course, getting taxed more. And that's just kind of the way things work nowadays. We get penalized for people who are savers, own their own houses, have worked really hard. Maybe they have a pension too. They get beat up when it comes to taxes, which is truly unfair. But yes, I could definitely see that.
I found the answer to my question, Tim. Last balanced budget occurred 25 years ago during the Clinton administration.
Yeah.
And before that, it was another 30 years before that. LBJ was in the White House. So
What does that tell you?
only once in my lifetime.
Right. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
it's important to remember that we've got bills to pay, right? And the Congressional Budget Office report shows that we brought in $4.9 trillion in tax revenue in the year 2024. But non-discretionary spending before the president, before Congress got to sit down, discuss anything, any agenda item, any extra spending, including military and defense, by the way, 4.9 sounds like a lot, but we spent that before we even talked about spending money, Tim. Interest on the debt, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, other non-discretionary spending items took all of that money. So we've got to raise more from somewhere. And I've got to believe the passage of this one big, beautiful bill does not negate the reality that at some point in time, they're going to come back around and find other ways to raise taxes, raise rates, or assess additional fees.
Right. And one of those places would probably be to tax 100% of the Social Security that you're getting, which, I mean, that just seems very unfair that, you got taxed once, put in the money, and then you're pulling it out now and you're getting taxed again. That's just ridiculous. But I do see, they're going to go after, where the money is, right? They're going to follow the dollar, just like everyone does. And I could see means testing being there as well, or or cutting back what someone who's wealthy can get from their Social Security just because they've been a saver and they have X amount in assets or something.
Another provision that has been in the center of the tax conversation, Tim, has been the estate tax exemption. The
Yep.
2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act nearly doubled that, all the way up to nearly $30 million for a married couple in 2026. It seems like now is the time to do some planning. I know that conversation probably affects far fewer people who might be listening
Sure.
to this program, but man, is that a costly conversation to overlook any element of if it would apply, does apply, or even if your assets today might grow to that point at some point in the future. Like, do the planning now, right, Tim?
Well, one of the ways that I've seen wealth extrapolated, and this is a story for a different time on another show, but life insurance for pennies on a dollar, you can leverage your money. That's how the Kennedys, the Waldens of Walmart, the Walmart family had done it. And that's what I'm seeing with our wealthy clients. We're hooking them up with different situations that really pays out to their beneficiaries without taxes, and they love it.
Well, and you might say I don't have that in my portfolio, but some folks out there might not remember to incorporate farmland or
Yep.
rentals and real estate holdings, the value of a closely held family business. Like all of that goes into the value of the estate, and there may be more people than even realize it that would ultimately be subject to some estate taxes. So again, now's the time to do the planning on that, and to take advantage. Now, Tim, that senior bonus deduction, that extra $6,000 deduction, that perhaps leaves even a little bit more room within the bracket to do Roth conversions.
That's right.
And somebody may say, well, $6,000, like, I'm already 65 or 70 years old.
Sure.
How much is that going to really matter? But if you had said the same thing about saving when you were 25 or 30, imagine how much less you would have now, right? Every bit helps, even if it's just a smaller amount.
I don't know anyone who wants to pay more taxes. So to your point, every penny helps. And those pennies become dollars, and next thing you know, you're actually saving a lot of money. Not to mention that, the power of compounding over your lifetime of, paying too much in taxes. What if you can move that money into a Roth and just let the thing roll? For a legacy play or something like that, it's excellent.
And Tim, some amount of tax diversification is also some risk management. If they do change laws into the future,
Right.
those dollars that are already pre-taxed and tax-free in those Roths and the cash value would not be impacted by that.
Right. They're earmarked. You know what taxes are today. That's what I always tell our clients. You know what they are today. Let's act on them now, while we can. And then we'll look at it year by year, because God knows it will be changing.
Well, the bottom line, Tim, this passage of this one big, beautiful bill, we probably don't know everything that is in it yet. We've just begin to start digging in and getting the highlights, but already there's a lot that affects people's planning. All plans at this point in time, financial and retirement plans probably need to be revisited and reevaluated and possibly revised for the now new set of laws.
Right. And if you haven't done that out there, and if your advisor is, a shy person that doesn't want to do anything but money management, give us a call because we're happy to dig in and see what we can save you.
Again, the number to reach Tim Stearns, CFP, the team from TJ Stearns, Inc., 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256. And as always on the program, they make one big, beautiful offer that if you would like to get your plan put together, the Protect and Grow written retirement plan, they offer to do that at no cost, no obligation. It is a complimentary courtesy service. Just giving them a call, 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256. You can also go online to tjstearns.com. Lots of great information available there. You can request a time for a phone call or a visit. You can also request a download of that book. But if you would like the book, a physical copy of Solving the Modern Retirement Riddle, Tim has also made that available for listeners and viewers of the show today. So just give a call to request a copy of Solving the Modern Retirement Riddle, as well as getting the conversation started to have your personalized Protect and Grow written retirement plan updated for the passage of the one big beautiful bill and all of the changes that it has made to your finance and the tax code. So again, 800-640-2256. That is 800-640-2256. Tim, as always, it's great to see you. Sometimes we've got more exciting current events and news. Sometimes we just talk about good old-fashioned importance of planning and the value of doing so. But I think this is a kind of a combination of both, is that those folks in Washington, they're going to continue making themselves feel important and changing things, and we've got to make sure the plan changes and stays up to date.
And that's why we need to get ahead of it and act on it now. So thanks for having me, Peter.
Always a pleasure. And again, give Tim Stearns, CFP, a call, ladies and gentlemen. 800-640-2256. That is 800-640-2256.
Tune into Chicagoland certified financial planner Tim Stearns' full radio program and visit tjstearns.com for many valuable resources, including other great episodes of Chicagoland Retirement. Be sure to subscribe.
Investment advisory services offered through Cornerstone Securities, LLC. The information presented on this program is provided for informational purposes only without warranty of accuracy, completeness, or suitability for particular purpose. This program is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, or tax advice. This information is general in nature, not specific enough to be construed as advice. You should not make any decision based on the information presented on this program without independent consultation with an appropriately licensed professional or competent advisor. Investment in securities or the market involves a potential risk for loss of principal. Trading, therefore, may not be suitable for all listeners. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals or growth from annuities may be taxable as ordinary income in the year it is taken. Individuals should review contracts for specific details of the product's features and costs.